Hello, everyone, and welcome back to week 4, season 3 of the Inspire series. Here I am once again with my partners in story, Sarah, Josh, Karen, and our guest, Julie from Books in Homes. Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we are going to be talking about traditional versus self-publishing, the pros and cons. Is it the right path? I don't know, there's so much to both sides. Sarah, I'm going to ask you to, I guess, take on this session because you've done both self-published and traditional. So, yeah, handing over to you.
Oh, thank you. This means quite a bit to me, actually. And I gave a talk, I think, about 4 months ago at a literary festival about self-publishing. So it's something that I can talk lots and lots and lots about. But I'm going to try and condense it because I have a lot of messages in my inbox from people who are looking to self-publish, or they say self-publish versus traditional. So I have this question all the time, and I know that people just want to be given some kind of nugget or something just to kind of go with. So I'm going to try and rail it in a little bit. So self-publishing versus traditional, I have done both. I self-published a children's book called The Heavy Bag back in November 2020, and it's a children's grief book. So it follows a little girl who's just lost her granddad. It's called The Heavy Bag, and she carries a very heavy bag of weight and emotion, and so that's here in the UK, and it's now been translated into 14 languages and counting, and then it's been published because it's been picked up by foreign rights agencies and publishers worldwide. So it's actually gone the traditional route with lots of different editions, from Ukrainian to American to Arabic to Swedish, French, all over. So I've done that, and then that's kind of kickstarted my writing career, where I've also been published traditionally. I do commission work, so I've kind of seen everything. I am a very proud self-publisher, and I have to say that's probably taken me 3 years to say that, because there is a little bit of a taboo around it. And the one thing that if people listen today and they're thinking, okay, so I've got this idea, I've got this book, can I get it published through a publisher, or should I self-publish? Which way should I go? This is my advice to you. If you self-publish a book, you're not an author who just happens to publish a book. You become a publishing house. And I think we're going to talk about this in a minute with Karen. This is so important because you become a publishing house. And when you also work with publishing houses, only then do you actually realize what it takes to publish a book. So you have to remember that this book is the vehicle for your story. So that's one thing. You've written this book, and these pages, this physical product has your story in, and we can all get our stories out there. We've spoken about that before. But if you actually want to become a self-published author, you are going to have to publish this book, and you're going to become a publishing house. And when you work within publishing houses, you realize they have a department or a person for everything. And that basically means that you are going to have to become all of those people, because if you don't, you may have it printed, and you may be able to put it into some stores maybe, or sell it on your website. But to actually publish it, there's so much more to it than just printing a book. So your marketing, it's your social media, you're dealing with contracts, you're looking at foreign rights, you're doing author events, you're doing book events, you're doing the nitty gritties. So you have to really go into it with your eyes open. If you do it and you really do have your eyes open to what it entails, then it's actually a really, really amazing experience. And I think I kind of liken it to learning languages. Like, I love different languages, and I think the more that I learn about other languages, the more I understand my own language, because you get to learn all these different nuances and the differences and the similarities. And I think that's the same with self-publishing and traditional publishing. It's not until you have self-published a book and you've gone through that whole process where you've really published it, you've been the publisher as well as the author, that you actually understand traditional publishing better as well. So I understand that process a lot more now. And I think that's the thing, you can't blur the lines. So you're not this author that's publishing, you are the author of the book, but you are also the publisher. And with that comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of things that you're going to be trying for the first time, because we're not taught about this when we become writers or when we kind of do these creative writing courses. So I think that's really important. But I do think it's an amazing experience. I have learned a lot, and I've learned it by hitting the ground running, and it's been a really lovely experience. And I haven't stopped myself from being able to do what other authors have done, and I've basically mimicked myself against publishing houses. So I'm looking at what they're expecting of their authors, where they're expecting author events and school events and library events and book festivals. Okay, so that's what I need to be putting myself out there for. And actually, I think the taboo from self-publishing has waned quite a lot since the pandemic. And I think actually we are able to work with festivals and events and bookstores just as much as some of these publishing houses are doing. And you have 100% control. You have complete control. You know, if I wanted my book translated into Arabic, then that's what I spent the next few months researching publishing houses, and I found a translator and a team. And you know, you can do that. Do I want to give away some of my free books to charities? Yes, I do. So I'm going to do that. I don't have to go to anybody and ask them. So I'm working with UNICEF, and I can give books and I can do collaborations, and you know, so you have that absolute joy. But it's hugely hard work, and I don't think I could do it for every single book, and that's worth understanding. I do feel like we should all have that one book that we self-publish, but I mean, I know I couldn't do it for every single book because I just don't have the time, the hours in the day to do it. Karen, I know that you've just gone, so you are traditionally published, but you've just started your journey of self-publishing. How has that been?
Well, first of all, I think what determines whether you go traditional or self-publish is a lot of the time is the story and how much passion you have for it and how much you believe in it. Because the book I'm self-publishing is about my city, and it's 2 children exploring the natural environment where I live. So it's very niche. But I had so much passion for it because I want Shellharbour children to know how unique and special where we live is. So, but I promised myself, I think if you're going to self-publish, you need to set a goal. And the only goal I set was it's going to be the best local book in Australia. And I know I have achieved it. When those come, I'm so happy with it. I have achieved it, and I'm a self-doubter. So it's like what you were saying, when you learn about this, like there's nobody else. You have to make the decisions, and then you're worrying about you making the right decision. And I even spent 2 weeks lying in bed worrying about an apostrophe.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is killing me. This is killing me. And I got nobody to ask. I ended up asking the local information centre. I said, I need help with the name of this place, because the lazy way is without the apostrophe and the proper way is with. So they said, it's absolutely your call. It comes back to you. So I made the call to put it in because it's in print and it's professional. So at all times, you have to make sure you feel like your book, you're not just doing it so you can say self-published. It's something you're proud of, something you're passionate about, and it's you need to know like where you're going with it and if it's good enough or not. And I had moments where I thought it was, and it wasn't. And you have to learn patience. It's taken me years. And things will happen and they'll let you down. Like the illustrator told me, the first illustrator told me she was working on the illustrations, and halfway through the year, her art career took off and she got very busy. So at the beginning of this year, I said, where are the illustrations? And she said, I haven't got time to finish it. So I had to start again. But I flipped my thinking. I went, well, now the manuscript's sat for a year. I can look at it again through fresh eyes. It's actually done the story a favour. And I went to myself, is it a picture book or is it a book about where you live? And I said to myself, no, first and foremost, it's a picture book. So I learned about killing your darlings. And then you have to learn like how many pages you want it to be, because mine is 36 and I had to cut things out, but the standard picture book is 32. But I have met other people, like I did the CBCA literary luncheon this year and I met Danielle Kamer. She's a doctor and her first book is self-published and her second book is coming out traditionally. And the quality of her book is stunning. I'll just hold it up. So you know, like I think you get the luxury of choosing the illustrator, but also the illustrator needs to be available. Some illustrators are not available for 2 or 3 years. So are you going to wait for that person or are you going to find someone else? Or and then even like I'm notorious for I can look at every word when I copy edit, but I'm notorious for not seeing commas.
And I think actually that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot that as the self-publisher of your book you are going to be doing, but I think what is priceless is having an editor look over it. So there are costs that are involved, but they are absolutely worth it, because you are going to publish a book and you want this book to be the best that it could be, that people can't tell the difference, is this from a traditional publisher or a self-publisher. And I think, with an editor, that's hugely important. Judy, I was just gonna say, you've done both. You've self-published and you're obviously with traditional publishers as well.
Julie,
how have you found that process of self-publishing against traditional?
I actually loved self-publishing, and it was a beautiful treasury edition of a comic. 48 pages of story and then supplementary pages. I think a really critical thing for any self-publisher is to find a good designer, because you want your book to pop. You want it to look like it's got quality behind it. And I think a big mistake some self-publishers do is either they design it themselves or they don't. They find, someone who's not a book designer who just kind of slaps it together and it doesn't look polished, because if you want to be taken seriously, it needs to look as if it came from a traditional publisher. And I think design is everything. And even font selection, I had a discussion with a friend of mine who had a picture book published recently. Book is great, but the font that was chosen, it just did not work. And she agreed. She didn't self-publish it. It was published from someone else. She agreed, but didn't think she had a voice. But and so that relates to what you said before. The great thing about self-publishing is that you can make the creative decisions on the whole process. I've been lucky because I've worked for the Australian Society of Authors for many years as their publications manager. So I built up a lot of skills. I've also worked as a publicist and a marketing manager. So I've built up a number of skills, but the skill set that I don't have is something you mentioned, which is about all the rights management. It's about all the translation rights. That's something I have to learn about. And I also have to learn about the money side. I understand how it works in retail, but I need to, and I could probably stick to a budget, but it's also about that measurement of, you know, what happens if you've got firm sale versus sale or return. I think as a self-publisher, you might have to take the risk of doing firm sale, because the other one is just too, you might lose out on some sales through the traditional route. But at least you don't have to get books returned and then have to think about, you know, balancing it all off. There's something in the equation that I don't know whether you're aware of, but in the comics community, a lot of people who are self-publishing are using Kickstarter and doing it very, very successfully. In fact, even Neil Gaiman, with the estate of Terry Pratchett and with a phenomenal artist called Colleen Doran, about 3 months ago, ran a Kickstarter campaign for a graphic novel adaptation of what's the book that was made into a television series that's on Prime?
Hunger Games?
No, that's not. It's not Hunger Games. It's a sorry, it's just slipped through my mind at the moment. It'll pop up. They raised $3 million. And the graphic novel adaptation was knocked back by traditional publishers. And they made in 1 month, they made over $3 million. That's how powerful it can be.
Yeah. There's definitely this momentum with people getting out there and self-publishing. And I think it's when people, you know, people in the industry are starting to see its worth, that other people are as well. Josh, you've only been traditionally published. You haven't been over to our side yet, have you? Is there anything that could, is there anything that could tempt you at all? Are you happy where
I suppose the only thing is I'm literally a tight ass. I don't want to spend any of my own money, and that's something I know with traditional self-publishing. You've got to really fork out for every aspect of it. And it's important that you do. It's important that you pay for an editor, you pay for a designer, you pay for typesetting, you pay for an ISBN, you pay for barcodes and all that sort of stuff, and you pay for distribution or warehousing or whatever, unless it's going to be in your shed. And I think that takes such a level of commitment and belief in your product and what you're creating. And that, you know, that Karen, you would know, is that you're putting all that into that because you believe in this idea so much, you're going to put your money behind it. And when I first started, I wasn't in that frame of mind. I was going, oh, this is a cool idea. I'll just put together a book, send it off to a couple of traditional publishers, get rejected, and then one says, yes, we'll do it. And I went, okay. So, but now I'm looking at, you know, taking the next level and going a different direction. So, but for me, it still comes down to the cost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There is this thing in the middle now, isn't there? There's the hybrid publishing. So
yes,
there is a third option for people. So I don't know if people have heard of this, but yeah, so you can self-publish and it's all on you. You can traditionally publish and it's all on them, but ultimately it is your work. And then you've got this sort of area in the middle where you can hybrid publish. And my take on it is,
this is not. Does this come under the vanity publishing aspect you're talking about?
Okay, so for a long time there was this what was called a vanity publisher, and they were basically people who would, you know, take people's money to publish their book, their idea, and it got a really bad press because there was a lot of people that suddenly kind of went into this and thought, oh, this is a good idea. Of how we can make lots of money. So that's kind of got quite a lot to be around it. But then it kind of, some very clever people realized that actually you could hybrid publish. And I know of quite a few very good publishers who are hybrid publishers who said, yeah, actually, no, we don't want to just take people's money. We actually want to offer them a service as a publisher. So we will offer them A, B, you know, distribution, marketing, book layout, book design, all of those things. But rather than them being a self-publisher and having to pay for it themselves and do it themselves, we can work with the author. And I think that's more how hybrid publishing is seen now. The publisher is working with the author, and together they create this book. Ultimately, obviously, the writer still pays the publisher, so you're still paying out, which you would if you were self-publishing, but you're just kind of more under this guidance. And quite often the hybrid publishers will have the distribution already. They'll have a lot of contacts, and so I think it's a really good option, which again I feel is like growing again in momentum. However, you do have to pick the right ones, because sometimes people say to me, oh, have you heard of this hybrid publisher? And they send me through what they're offering and how much they're charging, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, okay, that doesn't cost nearly as much as that. So you really do have to do your research. But there are some very lovely sort of boutique hybrid publishers now. So again, I think everything's just moving and changing. I think for a long time the publishing industry was just set in stone, and I feel like slowly it's starting to kind of diversify more, because more people are wanting to, you know, write their book and publish their book and, you know, go with their creativity. So I definitely feel like it's starting to flush out slightly the people that didn't have the best interests, as opposed to people that are coming through now that genuinely want to help people get their books out there and keep this market going. Otherwise it just becomes very stagnant with the same authors, the same illustrators, the same faces. We really do need to be mixing it up. Yeah, freshen up completely. Karen, is there one thing that as you're coming towards the end of your self-publishing journey that you would have done differently?
No, I think I've got the learning from it. But what I would say is it depends on your level of writing experience too. If you're a beginner writer and you're going to self-publish, like my writing when I first started to now is so different, and it's improved a lot. So you really need to, I don't know, have some runs under the belt and be like, Jennifer published my other books. If I didn't have that experience, I don't know if I would have self-published, or and then Feathers as well. And Jennifer, even I could ask, like one day we were on the computers together and I could just read the manuscript to her and I could go, no, she let me make the decisions, but having that person there to go, oh no, that doesn't sound right, take that out, or whatever. You can't rush it, you can't race it. It is a slow burn thing. And even for me, I don't know how I'm going to do distribution, because my goal is just for it to be a local book and I want to sell it locally. And for me, that may be enough. You need to know where you're going and what you're doing with it. But, you know, if it was a book with more universal appeal, it may be different. So you need to know where you're going with the book and your level of experience. And also you need to have a few good people you can ask questions. Like, I'm not very good at seeking help. It's my weakness. So I will try and work things out myself, but you don't have the knowledge sometimes, and
that's why it's important to join Squibby.
You fall short. Yes.
Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I was going to say that actually, because I know we mentioned Society of Authors as well earlier, because I kind of float between the two, and I think that's important for people who are looking to self-publish a book. Understand you can still join these associations, and that's really important because you can tap in to all the information and the guidance that they give you when it comes to things like contracts, because they are overwhelming. And when I think back to some of the contracts that I signed in the beginning, I mean, it was just crazy, because it is just mind boggling, some of the language that they learn, that they use, and it's even more so when it's going as a foreign edition. I mean, that's that's something that is obviously a whole different area to itself, and they actually have different areas for the foreign agents and people at different festivals. So it's you've basically have to become a business. And I don't want to take away from people who are thinking of self-publishing a book, because ultimately they want to get their story out, and that's such a creative direction to go in. But you do have to be aware of it, because the worst thing would be is to think that it's just to write a book, have it illustrated, and then just print it and get it out there. Because if it's slated because of how it looks and its quality, that is the worst thing. That is the worst way that you could start your writing career for you, because reviews don't even go into the story. They'll just look at how the book's put together. So I really think you just need to really kind of go into it with your eyes open, understand that you will become a publishing house. But I definitely think it's definitely an experience that I've learned a lot from. Julie, I've found as well that a lot of book organisations such as yourselves are really open to self-publishing as well. I mean, there's no kind of barriers, or there isn't as many barriers anymore of having self-published books going into organisations as well. And I think also, do you feel that it's good to have all this back history for when you're presenting to children, because we're really going from grassroots upwards, aren't we? It's a good story to inspire children.
I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Yeah, do you feel that you'd be just as happy to accept self-published books and have self-published authors come in and tell their story, or do you
through Books in Homes?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to put my different hats on.
Yes.
Oh, there's absolutely no problem whatsoever. For me, I went in 2006. I went to an event in Orlando, Florida, called the Mega Book Marketing Conference, and there were about 1,000 people who came there. There were publishers, agents, all kinds of people, and they said right at the beginning, they said, the paradigm has shifted. You're going to walk in one person and you're going to walk, we're thinking you know about this industry, and then you're going to walk out another person. And everything there was about the impact of the internet on publishing and technology on publishing, and also the acceptance of self-publishers. And they were absolutely right. They were absolutely right on that. So the days... there are the old vanity publishers still floating around, but I've edited works for people who've actually gone through the hybrid publishers and have had a very positive experience. You've just got to do your homework, as you suggested before, and figure out, are they just taking your money to print the book, and you're going to be stuck with 5,000 copies in your garage and no marketing plan or distribution plan? Or is this a legitimate hybrid publishing model that's going to follow through on all those steps along the way? Because as you said, it doesn't finish when you write and illustrate or print the book. There's a whole process that goes on beyond that. And that's what publishing is all about. So, I do believe there's been a real shift and a greater acceptance of self-published books. And sorry, I just must add that while I was at the Society of Authors, I remember that I was talking to one of the members, and she had sent her, it wasn't a children's book, she had sent her health book around to every single publisher in Australia. They had knocked it back. She self-published and ended up selling 60,000 copies of it. And then Penguin picked her up and picked up all the follow-up books as well. So self-publishing can be an avenue into traditional publishing as well, provided that you do understand the process and you knuckle down and understand the discipline of it all and get those things right. And you won't always get them right. You'll learn along the way, Karen. I hear you. But that's what life is all about. You make mistakes and then you course correct next time round.
You need, if you're traditionally published, you need to trust the person you are signed with. It's of the utmost importance, because if it's a picture book, once they have your words, That's it for you. The publisher then chooses your illustrator and the cover, and you help with the blurb or whatever. You need to trust who you're signing with. And then you get the bonus of their foresight and their wisdom and their knowledge, because they know the process, and they also know maybe who to look for. Like with the picture book, they have an illustrator in mind, and they know a style that will suit the story, and it may be totally different to what you think. But if you want the book to be the best it can be, you need to trust who's publishing your book. And I really think I was fortunate, because I did trust, and I got beautiful books. Whichever way you go, it depends again on the story. And also there's less opportunity to be traditionally published now. It's a very, very competitive field, and it may not have anything to do with your writing. You may not fit what their list is, what they're looking for, or your style or whatever. And so then maybe your only option is to self-publish. No, if you really believe in that story. So it's very much up to the individual.
Josh, I was going to say, because when I see you, I mean, you're just this one man, amazing businessman, author, like just everything you do. Do you ever feel restrained being under a publisher? Like, do you have to abide by everything they say, or do you find a way to get ideas in, or do you just kind of like suck it up and cringe if they come up with an idea, but you just kind of accept that is the process for being traditionally published?
It's a bit of both. I mean, I suppose in my situation, I've had the same publisher for about 10 years now, so there's been a good, strong relationship there. And but it's not always a given. Whatever I pitch to them, they're going to go yes. They would go. So I've had a couple of ideas I've pitched, and they've gone, yeah, sorry, Josh. Might want to try again. Do something else. But I'm not constrained, because I like to think of myself. It's almost like I have self-published, because I really take the extra effort. I buy extra copies. I sell them through my website as signed copies, and I go to schools. I sell direct to schools, all that, because I make more money as a percentage from doing it that way. So I run myself. Do you
organise your school events, or does your publisher?
Yes, I do it all.
Which is why I see you as I saw you as a self-publisher as well as traditionally published. Because I see you out there doing so many school events, community events. But okay. So you can still do that if you're with a traditional publisher. You can still organize your own events.
It just depends on how deep you want to go into it. How do you want to make it your life? If you want to make it your life, then you need to take an active role and be your own ambassador and put yourself forward. Even though you traditionally publish, so you don't have to spend money on all that sort of stuff, but you do have to spend money and time and effort and all the social media stuff, all the marketing and all that kind of author platform, which is so important, because your publisher wants to see you doing that as well, and then they'll back that up.
Okay, so that's interesting. Basically what we're saying is the two ultimately kind of merge at some point, because if you're a self-publisher, or if you choose to go down the self-publishing route, ultimately you are going to become a traditional publisher for yourself. If you go with a traditional publisher, it's a good idea to have some self-publisher tricks up your sleeve, because you're going to need to know how to do that. So it's all kind of coming together, isn't it? Basically, your book is your book, whether you self-publish it, whether you go with a hybrid publisher, or whether it goes to the traditional publisher. That is still your book. And if you've got your heart and your soul and your pride in that book, you will have to do whatever it takes to get out there and do it, whether you're traditionally published or self-published or with a hybrid publisher. And I think that's really important, how they're all starting to merge slightly. And I think that's why the traditional publishing industry are saying, we need to do something, because actually I think this platform's rising more, and I think there's a lot of people coming in who are actually causing a storm here, and that could be quite worrying for us, because let's not forget that I think traditional publishers take on, was it 1% out of all submissions? I mean, and they get thousands and thousands and thousands. So it's really never normally your work. It's just timing, and it's catalogs, and it's business, it's everything else. So I do think the self-publishing space is growing, and I think it's growing in respect as well, and I think it's good to know both. Whichever route you decide to go down, I think it is good to learn both. Yes, well, I'm going to hand back to Jen. I think that was such a good
Julie, go ahead.
I just wanted to add 2 little points. Number one is, you might have a particular idea and you've pitched it to all these traditional publishers. It's a solid idea, but for some reason they don't like it, or it doesn't suit their list, or whatever. Sometimes it's a question of timing. That it might not be right at that time for the market, or whatever, or the trends that are happening. And the second thing is, if you have real belief in that story, you can recycle it. I've had ideas that have been knocked back, and I've recycled them into a completely different story for a completely different, title. So the idea is not lost. It's just, it wasn't right for this one, but I've recycled it for another one, and it's worked really well. And if it is a question of timing, then maybe you put it aside for a little while, but don't forget it. You can pull it back out and then refresh it and bring it back out. But you can always trust, if you trust the story or the product, and no one else does, you just have to back yourself sometimes. And self-publishing is the way to do that.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, brilliant. So I think everyone's got lots of nuggets, and I think actually it's much better for people out there now who are still deciding which step to take. They've got this whole plethora of different options, and I think they're all really, really viable. And I think the key thing is, you're going to get your book out there, you're going to get your story out there, and you're going to learn a lot whichever way you go.
Yeah, and one of the main things is, do your research. Like we've said all through this, research the publishers. Whether you want to be traditional or self-research, there's millions out there. So I think that's one of the biggest steps.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to trust, and all those other things come into it. So choosing the right one for you. What's right for me may not be right for you, but that's okay. It's finding what suits you and what you want to do and what your goals are. And so, I think quite a few nuggets have been dropped tonight that people will find really, really useful for their publishing journey. So thank you so much, everyone, once again, for this discussion, a great discussion on the pros and cons and how it all works. So thanks, everyone, and I will see you all back again for week, what's next week? Week 5. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.